This sparks a whole new conversation around the Montreal Canadiens as after Elliotte Friedman on the most recent episode of 32 Thoughts dove into the Mason McTavish situation in Anaheim and how it's looking like they're on two completely different terms about a contract. Us and a lot of Habs fans have been speculating about how a new move could be even more likely than ever, but there is an unfortunate twist in all of that he also said. We have to dive into everything Elliotte Friedman said. Plus, we got some very interesting video, a very good compilation from practice over the last few weeks about Noah Dobson and Lane Hutson together. And there are some stats that show that even this could be quite a bit better than we expected. But before we get into any of that today, of course, wanted to say rest in peace to Ken Dryden. Of course, this guy, my take is that if he had had a longer career, he would have been the best goalie in the history of the sport. But honestly, he had the best peak of any goalie in the history of the sport. But more than a hockey player, he was an amazing human. Of course, we all know he went and became a lawyer. He got a PhD, worked in Parliament. He did so many things. As good as he was as a hockey player, he sure seemed to be better as a human. So just wanted to take a moment at the start of this video to pay respects to Ken Dryden. Of course, I'm sure a lot of you guys will want to as well. Would love to see some comments thanking Ken Dryden for everything he did for the Habs, everything he did for our country of Canada, and everything he did for everyone. So rest in peace, Ken Dryden. Never easy to transition out of something like that, but let's focus on some Montreal Canadiens today. And I want to go into some stuff that was happening at practice. Now, this video I'm going to play was tweeted out by Patu Info. I will link it down below as always. But originally, I believe it was by Maeda Sports, who did a little bit of a compilation with Lane Hutson and Noah Dobson working together, because it's been something that I think a lot of us have said, this is probably not going to happen because they both play a similar offensive style. Now, obviously, they play differently, but that offensive style, though, they both bring it to the table. There's no doubt about that. But look at these clips of Noah Dobson, especially on the defensive end, and what they said in the tweet and what seems to be the consensus right now, which I have been saying for a while, if you've been watching the show all summer. Noah Dobson is harder to play against when he is defending than people might think. He is so big, his stick is always in the right spot, and he is so fluid on his skates that he is able to shut down so many lanes. Is he is he very physical? Not necessarily. That's not really his strong suit. The dude doesn't go out and get a ton of hits, but something I've been saying for a while is that his defense, especially at even strength, has been better than people have thought. Because you look at this JFresh chart. Now, again, I've also seen people say last year was an outlier. Some people call it an outlier. I call it a trend because his offensive numbers went down, his defensive numbers went up. You can see even strength defense, 76th percentile in the NHL. Now, he didn't play any PK time. That's not something we're expecting him to do. Then again, I guess we didn't really expect Mike Matheson to take on as much of a role as he did. But his even strength defense last year, that 76th percentile is the 3-year weighted average data. If you just look at 24-25, he was in the 90 plus percentile. You can see that graph in the bottom right. His overall WAR percentile rank, which is wins above replacement, was up there like near the top of the league in terms of offense and defense just last year. And even if you look at those 3-year averages, he is quite good. And I saw this from Jason Paul, who tweeted this about a week ago. If you're a Habs fan, you gotta like what you see at Dobson's 5v5 stats relative to his teammates and the league. And this is a bit small, but I'll point you in the right direction. You can see Adam Pelech and Noah Dobson are the two guys. Well, I guess Mike Riley is way off there to the right, but he didn't have as much of a sample size. Noah Dobson and Adam Pelech were both very good at not only having strong chance suppression, but also strong chance generation. They were the only two players on the Islanders at 5v5 to be above average in terms of suppression and generation of chances. And there's not many guys, like, you want this axis to be like, you want to be as far up and to the right as possible. And Dobson is up there with like a decent number of players. Like, he's above most players in the league in terms of both. And again, when we're talking about a guy who could pair with Lane Hutson, you could call last year a fluke, and I think, a lot of people probably would say, yeah, maybe. But I think if Noah Dobson can come in, and even if he's not super physical, if he can be a fluid skater and be solid at shutting down chances off the rush, especially on 5v5, that is kind of the perfect guy to have next to Lane Hutson. And what I love about Dobson, again, he's a 5v5 player. That is like his strength. We have a few of those guys on the Habs. Namely, Brendan Gallagher has always had incredible 5v5 stats, whereas we also have some specialists, like Jake Evans thrives on the penalty kill. Most minutes by a forward last season. I don't know if that happened, if that stayed by the end of the season, but regardless, a guy like lining on the power play. So it's so interesting to look into something like that. And I want to hear your thoughts on it down below, because maybe I'm more optimistic than most, but took a discount to be here. Matthew Darch recently said, like, the GM of the Islanders, like, listen, like, I had a number, I wasn't going to go past it, and that's that. And hey, you know, signing for a discount in Montreal is a pretty good feeling. But I want to move on, and I want to go into this Mason McTavish stuff, because Elliot Friedman on this last episode of 32 Thoughts did a bit of a dive into it. And I do want to preface this by saying that Elliot Friedman said, I don't, quote, this is a Friedman quote, I don't think Anaheim wants to trade him, but I don't know if they'll get a bridge deal done, right? So he's kind of saying, like, you know, he doesn't think Anaheim wants to trade him. It didn't seem like a firm Pat Verbeek is not taking calls, but there's a lot of controversy around this right now. And look, naturally, my eyes are glued on everything Mason McTavish. Something comes out about McTavish, I am looking at it. And I think a lot of you guys are too. Can you blame me? Like, this is the guy. This is the guy. Oh, I would love to have him on the Habs. But look, regardless, this is probably not happening anytime soon, though we do have that newly found cap space after trading away Carey Price. Friedman said about the McTavish extension, the one thing I've consistently heard over the last little while is I've heard they're not crazy about bridging McTavish. They prefer long-term. And again, went on to say that he doesn't think Anaheim's looking to trade him, but he thinks it's going to be hard to come to an agreement on a long-term deal. And that's where things kind of get a little interesting with Mason McTavish. Let me put him back up on screen. What am I doing? Because, again, 52 points in 76 games. He's 22 years old. He doesn't have a ton of experience in the league. But in the time he has spent in the league, the dude has been physical. The dude has been decent defensively. The dude has put up 20-plus goals. There's so much about Mason McTavish to love. Even his face-off percentage is pretty good. That if you're Anaheim, and, like, I've always seen these arguments, like, look, Anaheim has so many good young forwards, and I do get that to some extent, but so does Montreal. It's like, I don't really see the point of saying, well, you know, they don't need McTavish. It comes down to the disagreement, right? And Verbeek has been pretty stingy in the past when it comes to money. Now, the X factor in all of this, in my mind, the thing that, like, the reason this is sparking a whole new conversation is, like, what is that price, right? Because if ever, this is a big if ever Montreal was able to finagle a trade here, look, ignoring what we'd have to give up in the trade, how much would we sign him for? Because that was a big question in the Dobson deal, right? Like, how much is Noah Dobson going to extend for if we get him? Ended up being 9.5, which is less than a lot of people had as his market value. It's less than, you know, what the Blue Jackets would have paid him, right? So we got him for 9.5 at a slight discount. He took less money. Fine, that's great. Mason McTavish, what is that number? Because right now, that's kind of the big question. If Anaheim's not willing to give him a long-term deal, but McTavish, you know, like, if McTavish wants a bridge deal, like, I don't know. If Anaheim's not willing to give up the money for McTavish that he would want on a long-term deal, you have to wonder what that dollar value is, because young guys now, we're seeing it a trend across the league. You want to sign bridge deals or, like, shorter term deals to maximize your career earnings. I mean, who wouldn't? Anyone who's been in a job, it's like, you know, how can I work out my contract or maybe jump to another job if that's ever possible to try and make a little bit more, get a raise, right? Obviously, that's something you want. And, you know, you could argue, oh, these guys are already multimillionaires. Why does it matter? I'm not going to get into that part of it, but McTavish probably wants a bridge deal so he can sign a much bigger contract with this crazy salary cap projection. But if you want to ink him to an 8-year deal, Montreal is probably one of those teams that would absolutely be willing to pony up a decent amount of money to get that over the finish line. But the whole question is, how much is Anaheim willing to give up? How much would Montreal be willing to pay? And that's where it comes to you guys. What would you pay Mason McTavish on an 8-year extension if you did a similar kind of deal? You landed him versus landing Dobson, right? You extend him for 8 years. Are you paying him $8-9 million? Is that enough, do you think, for McTavish to want to do it? Because I understand, like, a 3-year bridge at like 6 or 7 per is going to be great for McTavish. He's absolutely earned that. Give him a bit more than Marco Rossi, see what he does, and deal with it down the line. And in reality, that could be what's going to happen. But it seems like they're at a bit of an impasse, and training camp's happening soon. This has to come to a head very soon. So keep an eye on it. I'm not saying anything's imminent, because I really don't think it is. But keeping an eye on this is absolutely worth it, because we have seen Ducks players in similar situations like this. Like, look, Xhekaj signed something, but then after, we saw what happened. Like, players can go. even if it doesn't seem like they're going to get traded, they might. So keep an eye on it. I'm keeping an eye on it. I'm just excited every time I see McTavish's name, especially when Friedman's talking about him. I got to take a look. But leave me your thoughts on all that down below, because that'll do it for this episode of the Habs Digest. And hey, you made it to the end of the video. Quick reminder, we still do have our ticket giveaway going on. Sunday is the last day for it. So leave a comment with the word giveaway. Make sure you like this video and are subscribed to the channel, and you will automatically be entered. Thank you for tuning in every single day. Excited about the giveaway. Thank you for watching all the time. I'm your host, Josh Gosse, and I'll catch you on the next one.